Hey, thanks for stopping by. Today, I want to talk about a case that I had no clue even was out there. And I don't know why. That's weird. There's a whole movie about it and everything. But this is a case that happened in the middle of the 1900s. And really, the main person that you're going to hear about in this case is actually Evelyn Dick. We have the most information, I think, on her out of everybody in the case. And I mean, this is a wild ride. So the the story is going to feature around the murder of Evelyn's husband, John Dick. So let's get to it. Evelyn Dick was born into a small family in Ontario, Canada, on October 13th of 1920. Evelyn was the only child born to Donald and Alexandra McLean, which it'll make more sense in a little bit. Listen, they hated each other. So, really, I mean, kind of surprised they even had one. I don't know. I'm just saying. Anyway, uh, Donald actually worked for the Hamilton Street Railway in Hamilton, Ontario, in Canada. And I mean, with the high ambitions that he had, he wasn't going to get there just by working as a streetcar operator. So, fortunately for him and for his family, he was able to climb up the ranks and get into an office position. So um, it was great until you realize that it wasn't enough for him. And I mean, is it really ever enough for somebody who is so extremely materialistic? Donald seemed to never be happy with his family status. So he ended up actually dipping into the revenues that his employer made. There was a lot of speculation about it for a long time, but I mean, he wasn't caught until Evelyn was an adult. So, I mean, how he got away with it for so long, I don't know. Maybe chalk it up to doing everything by hand. I don't know. And really, he would send Evelyn around town with like handfuls of nickels. So, a lot of people, the gossip around the town was that he actually was taking the money from the fare box for the streetcar because that's how much it cost to ride the streetcar back in the day. A nickel. That would be nice, right? Ugh. Now, this money that he was taking from his employer, he would use in the most frivolous ways. So, him and his wife Alexandra really felt like they they both wanted their social status to go up really high, and it kind of seemed like they took advantage of having Evelyn as a daughter, and they did everything they could to instill the same shallow materialistic ways that they felt into her. They would spend the money on lavish goods, fur coats, cosmetics. I mean, it was literally the definition of a beer budget with champagne taste. And I mean, he stretched that budget by stealing from his employer. So fuck that guy. Anyway, sorry about that. So remember, we're talking like way back in the day. Evelyn's born in 1920. The TV isn't even invented until 1927. And even then, it wasn't really popular in homes until the 50s. So, I mean, what else did you have to do for entertainment? Of course, they were gossiping. Of course. Now, Evelyn was not only made to feel like she should be on a pedestal around everyone, but she also was really segregated from the other children that lived in the neighborhood. Her parents would keep her inside so that she wouldn't fraternize with them because they weren't good enough for her. And while she did go to public school for a little bit, her parents actually ended up enrolling her in the Loretto Academy, which was really an all girls private school that was for the highest of the highest daughters. So, politicians, businessmen, and everybody knew Donald couldn't afford it. So, really, that started the gossip going. If people weren't already talking about Donald, they definitely were now. But for some reason, nobody ever did anything. So, I guess he just continued walking around with all the stolen money and everybody knew. I don't know. I don't know what to tell you. Now, even though Evelyn really had just her parents in the end, she ended up gravitating more toward her mother to the point where, like, they would sleep in the same bed together. And this was kind of a habit that she even took into adulthood. Evelyn's parents continued to push her to have the same ambition that they did to climb the social ladder and, in the end, of course, gain affluency and worship the almighty dollar. So it almost comes as no surprise that they would encourage her to go on dates with older men and to accept gifts and money from them just to let herself mingle with the highest men at the top. And I'm sure they were really pleased when, as she was turning into a teenager, she was really blossoming into a very beautiful woman. Now, with Donald and Alexandra, I kind of like going through the pictures and everything, I just get the vibes that they never really got a chance to understand real love, and the whole culture that they cultivated in Evelyn as she was growing really did not help. I don't know that Evelyn really, at least as far as we know from the information available, it almost seems like she never really found the way to actually love anybody like a real love. I mean, it's clear that she loved her daughter, but I don't know if it was really the pure kind of sweet love. It almost seems like it's just all about her, and I mean, that's how her parents raised her. Now, on top of her inability to really connect and have that love with somebody, it seemed like it was especially hard for her with men. I mean, like I said, the closest person she ever really came to actual real love with was she loved her daughter, but just I don't know how real it was, but her divide with men was just even more heavy. I mean, we'll get into a little bit more details later on, but there was an extra wall between her and any males around her. And I have to, based on what came out in the trial, I probably have to credit a lot of that to the way her dad was when she was being raised. Yeah, her mom was strict, but her dad was abusive, okay? Not only was he a drunk and probably said some pretty verbally abusive things, but she also had came out later on and said that he had molested her as a little girl. And this was part of the reason why she had such a need to sleep next to her mom, and maybe even part of what fueled the mother's anger toward him. Because, I mean, we're talking way back in the day. I don't know that Alexandra would have felt empowered enough to be able to divorce Donald. I mean, this is a long time ago. So, I mean, what, in the 1970s is when women in the US first got the ability to have a credit card, for fuck's sake. Like, it wasn't easy as a woman back in the day to leave a marriage where you're being abused or where your child's being abused. I'm not excusing it, but I'm just putting a little bit of context in there. Now, the Royal Connaught was the hotel in the area that was just the most fancy, and Evelyn would throw parties there, and in those parties that she had at that fancy hotel all the time, she would buy gifts for people, and again, just kind of pushing her love in the more materialistic way, and she never really got back what she was looking for. And I think again it just comes down to not really understanding love and relationships in the way that they are the most healthy. So, it was an unfortunate handicap that she had, but, maybe she grew out of it. I don't know. Now, not only did Evelyn throw those huge parties at that fancy hotel, but she also would go down to the racetrack. And again, she was looking to score an audience with the rich and powerful men. And I'm sure she was very charming. She was described as really manipulative and cunning by a lot of the people that knew her. So, I'm sure between that and between her beauty and, all of that, I'm sure it was pretty easy. And I mean, yeah, yes, it was. Okay, so, well, in the court trial later on, actually, she admits to sleeping with over 150 men, okay? And I mean, we're talking about this town, so I mean, some people, okay, I'm getting into gossip territory, but to be fair, like that's all that's left because nobody can ask anybody anything anymore. But, I mean, people were saying that she had relations with like a lot of judges and authority figures and the rich and powerful people in the area. So, I mean, take that with a grain of salt, I guess. I don't know. But I mean, she also did say 150 dudes. So, I mean, at least some of them, I don't know. There's probably a percentage of people who had to be elite and up there. So, I guess she shot for her dreams. I don't know. So, all of this partying, all of this free love that she was giving around before it was popular in the 60s. She actually ended up falling pregnant in 1942. And if you thought people liked gossiping about her and the family before, oh man, here's a whole new thing. It's a baby. So there's actually solid proof now that, Evelyn's going around and everybody's speculating who could the baby be. Now, this was her daughter. Her daughter's name was Heather White. And the way that Evelyn played it off was she told everybody, yeah, I got married. So everybody was just like, huh? What? Married? You? I don't know. And I probably would have done the same thing. Let's be honest. Somebody who is that superficial and loves parties like the way that she did, the way that Evelyn liked parties, they're not going to not have a wedding. I mean, they're like the number one people who do those like the big weddings, you know? I don't know. Evelyn kind of strikes me like she would be a bridezilla too, and I feel like her mom and dad would do the thing. I don't know. Anyway, yeah, okay, listen, she's just that kind of person, okay? And it is what it is. I'm calling it like I see it, all right? So, when asked who this mysterious groom was of hers, she told everybody that she actually was married now to a soldier that was on the front lines of World War II, and his last name was White, hence Heather's last name being White. I mean, there was reports even that Evelyn was going around telling everybody that her last name was White. So, I mean, cool. Uh, there was no, okay. Eventually, she ended up telling everybody that her husband, the soldier White, he actually ended up dying on the front lines. But to be fair, when people looked up the information on him, they were not able to find any soldier that was identified by that name in that area. Like the information did not match. This guy was not real. I mean, they looked it up and, so. Makes you wonder who is Heather's dad. I don't know. Okay, there is speculation on who, but we'll get into that in a little bit. So, the year after Heather was born, Evelyn ended up giving birth to a stillborn baby. So, this was something that it wasn't really talked about much. So, I don't think that Evelyn had told people that her husband had died at that point. So, I don't know. I don't know that anybody was questioning the paternity of the stillborn at that time, but yeah, who knows? They probably were. There was no TV at the time, so. Now, in 1944, Evelyn gives birth to her third child, this one, a boy. His name was Peter White, and she ended up telling her mother that she actually gave the baby up for adoption because between having Heather and having her husband abroad and not being able to be there with the children, she couldn't handle it. She couldn't handle another baby. Now, again, because this is such an old case, there is other speculations. Do I believe the other speculation? No, I don't. But I'll just share with you what it is. So there was a story that I saw out there. I couldn't confirm it. But basically, there were some people who had said an article somewhere that said that actually Donald was upset that Evelyn had had another baby and he had murdered the baby. But I don't think that's true. I think that Evelyn telling her mother that she gave the baby up for adoption is probably exactly what ended up happening. So Evelyn tells her mother this and they move on. Now, having only Heather, Evelyn was able to go about and continue living the life she wanted. She got to go and hang out with, all of the men she wanted to, continue on with her fun party life. And it seems like Alexandra really did most of the raising of Heather. So, yeah, Evelyn was able to go out, which, I mean, really, if you think about it, I don't know why the mom didn't realize. I mean, if she's the one watching Heather, I don't know. Maybe she didn't want to take care of the baby too, and Evelyn didn't want to stay home, and that's why she believed when Evelyn told her that she had given Peter up for adoption, little baby Peter. So, um, maybe that was it. I don't know. In 1945, Alexandra and Donald finally end up splitting up. Thank God. Those two were so toxic. The child that they ended up bringing into the world and raising was just, she was something else. And I don't know that that's a good thing. I don't know. It's just, you'll understand when we get to the end. So, Alexandra moves out to an apartment. Evelyn actually decides she would rather live with her mother than live with Donald because remember, Donald had lost all trust with Evelyn, so I mean, I feel like she was probably living there just because he had the money and everything, but or maybe it was just easier for her. I don't know, but she ended up choosing to go and live with her mother and her daughter in an apartment in the town. And a few months after she ended up moving to this apartment, she met a man that just swept her off her feet, at least for a little bit. So she ended up meeting a recent Russian immigrant by the name of John Dick. Now, John Dick was 14 years older than Evelyn, and he actually ended up really making himself endearing to Evelyn because he was taking care of Heather with gifts. He was giving her gifts, and it just really impressed Evelyn. So it was kind of like, aw, it's sweet. So Evelyn ended up talking to him more, and he actually had the same employer as Donald, and he was doing the original job that Donald had had, being a streetcar operator. Okay? Now, I think that her parents kind of had her fucked in the head when it came to the value of a dollar or, how much actually to expect as a salary from that position because she thought that she was going to make out like a bandit by marrying John and it was going to be great. Which, okay, John wasn't the kind of person to be okay with the thievery like that. He seems like he was really trying hard to be more straight edged. There's just not enough information about him out there. I don't know if that was just his normal demeanor or if he was trying to turn a new leaf. Like, I don't have as much information on him as I would like, unfortunately. So, really, what we know is he swept Evelyn off her feet. She fell in love. She was ready to marry him, and her parents were pissed. Okay, this is not what they wanted. They had been literally training Evelyn all of her life so that she could go and marry a rich man and help elevate everybody. And now she's doing the exact opposite thing that they wanted. And does she even realize? I don't know. At some point, she does find out. I wonder, I don't know. I feel almost like this would be the perfect time for them to actually tell her, hey, listen, your dad doesn't actually make that much money. He gets all his money from stealing from his employer. So you're not going to get the same thing with John. I don't know. I kind of feel like they would do anything like that. It just, the vibes, man. That's what the vibes are, okay? I'm not one to argue them, okay? That's just how they were. I don't know. Evelyn soon found out that John wasn't able to give her what she wanted. So, it was the weirdest marriage, weirdest like beginning. I don't know. The whole thing is just weird. It's wild. It's just, it doesn't make any sense. Anyway, Evelyn had told John that there wasn't enough room in the apartment for him to move in. Okay, and all John seemed to want was just he wanted a wife and he wanted to settle down and, do the family thing. And Evelyn was just like, nope, not interested, thanks. Okay, now listen, there is another guy who kind of made this marriage into like a love triangle, okay? Bill Boswick was a man that I am pretty sure it came out in the end that she actually had known for years. He was like Evelyn's boyfriend kind of, but just not affluent enough to actually win her heart. He wasn't what her parents wanted. Okay? So he ended up actually being a big part of this story. So there was some things I found saying that he actually had met Evelyn by chance 5 days after her and John had married, and that was that. They went and they had sex that night. There you go. She went and did her thing, and the marriage was just, I mean, John still tried though. I don't know, whatever. They're doing their thing, and really, I'm pretty sure that, I don't know. Okay, here's my speculation. I personally think that Bill might have actually been the parents to her children, Evelyn's kids. Like, I think he was like Heather's dad or something, but obviously not proved ever, so nobody can ask anything. Just my speculation, but I don't know. It made sense. I don't know. Anyway. I wouldn't think that he was the father to all of them, but I definitely think that he was probably Heather's father. So who knows? It's done and over with now, so something we will never know. So Bill was a steel worker and he really had it hard for Evelyn, and they went on continuing on their affair, and John is wanting to meanwhile like settle down with his wife, and he's trying to figure out how to be able to live with her. And finally Evelyn buys the house. I don't understand. I don't know. Maybe she got the money. Maybe she had been saving it up from all the men over the years that had been giving her gifts, but she ended up buying a house. Now, she didn't let John's name be on the lease, which again, like, wild for that time. I don't know. Like, we just talked about it earlier. Women only even were able to get credit cards in the 1970s in the US. So just hearing about a woman owning her own house and paying for it, I guess. Anyway, finally, after about a month of them being married, Evelyn buys the house and they move into it together. Great. Things should be blissful now, is what John's thinking, but that's not how it happened, of course, because nothing can be easy with Evelyn, okay? She's got her own mind, she wants to live her own way, and I don't know. Good as long as you're not hurting anyone, Evelyn. But so they live in this house together for about a month. And then after that, remember, now they're like 2 months into being married. After that second month, she kicked him out and he ended up going and living with his cousins. And he was just, it seems like he was really upset because John went to Donald, Evelyn's dad, and he was trying so hard. Hey, Donald, help me out here. I want to live with your daughter. I love her. We got married. He wants anything, any kind of help he can get from Donald. And remember, Donald was so mad. Actually, Donald and Alexandra did not even end up going to their wedding, okay? Neither one of them approved of him. So, why would John expect Donald to help him? I don't know. But he did. And when Donald refused, John actually pulled out his own little bit of blackmail. You see, Evelyn had told John that Donald was stealing money from the railway. And John's over here like, what the fuck? Well, that's probably why your daughter thinks whatever I should have. That's probably why she thinks my salary should be so high. So Donald didn't like this. Donald actually threatened to murder John after that. And I don't know. There's no real details about exactly how it happened that I could find, but apparently John was so upset and like concerned, he actually ended up going to the police and reporting him. So, it's on record on March 6th of 1947 that John had gone to Donald asking for help with Evelyn and had in turn been given a death threat. So, I mean, that's there. And so, the day that John filed that police report is actually the same day that he was last seen. John was last seen that same day, March 6th of 1946, at the Windsor Hotel having lunch. Okay, so this next part, it's awful. So skip it if you don't have the stomach for like crime scenes, but we're going to get into it. March 16th of 1946. Five boys were out having a hike and they ended up coming across what they thought was the body of a pig. It was around Albion Falls. And when the boys went and inspected this so-called pig body that they thought they had found, they realized it wasn't a pig. So the authorities came out, and what it was the torso of a man with no limbs attached and no head attached. Somebody had dismembered this corpse and tossed it out in the middle of just, all the foresty ground, just throwing him out. What the fuck? Not only that, but it also looked like somebody had tried to cut it into smaller pieces because while there were a couple of like superficial bullet holes on the body, so basically the medical examiner came back and said that those shots in the chest could not have been what actually had done whoever this was in. But there was a big cut in the middle where they were trying, whoever had done whatever was trying to cut him into smaller pieces for some reason. Around this time, John had been living with his cousins, remember? And they were concerned because, again, he had been seen 10 days before that. So there's 10 days where they're raising the alarm. Hey, John's missing. We don't know where he is. Help us out, please. And you know, when they found the corpse, I'm sure they all were curious, thinking, I wonder if this is John. Since there was no limbs attached and the head was gone, identification could have turned out tricky. But luckily for them, they found the torso in time and they were able to actually see a couple of identifying features that was on the rest of John. So he had a cyst on his posterior side and he had one testicle that had never descended. So the cousin was able to pick out, yes, this is John, and they were able to go straight to Evelyn, right? Because, I mean, think of the time we're in, okay? We're in 1946. There is a woman who's married to a man who shows up like that, and they hadn't been living together. It's just, I've got some questions about the whole thing, okay? There's some problems here. Evelyn gave so many stories. It was fucking ridiculous. All right. So at first, she denied knowing anything at all. Okay. And then her story starts off with an Italian mobster showed up at her house demanding to know where John was. Where's John? She ended up not giving him as much information, just letting him know she hadn't seen John and, what's going on. Apparently, this mobster guy, he had a wife or a girlfriend or something, and John was sleeping with that person. So, you know, oh well. She figured that John must have just been murdered by the mafia man, right? Whoever the mafia man was. He didn't give her a name, supposedly. So, what can you do? There's another person who actually ended up kind of getting involved. His name is Bill Landig, but we're going to call him Landig so we don't confuse him with Evelyn's boyfriend, Bill. So Landig actually had reported to the police that Evelyn had borrowed his car. And when his car was returned, it was covered in blood. How weird. Okay, not only that, but the seat covers were missing too. So, what's going on here? Landig, he did what he should have and he reported it. And he also reported the story that Evelyn gave him for this. So, Evelyn told him the whole reason that the blood was even in the back of the car was her daughter Heather had ended up getting a bloody nose. So, oh man, just so sorry. I took the covers out and I don't know what to tell you. But of course, like this was bullshit, and I think everybody knew it. And they actually recovered. Okay, at this time, DNA was nothing like it is today. They were able to tell the blood type of the blood in the car, and it ended up being type O, which was John's blood type, funny enough. So now, when they go back to Evelyn with this, she changes the story, right, to accommodate this car being there. All right, now listen, okay? She tells the officer, oh, well, actually, I had gotten a phone call from the mob hitman, the Italian hitman, and he didn't tell me who he was, but he told me that I had to get where he was at because John had gotten his girlfriend or wife, whatever, John had gotten her pregnant. So, of course, like, she needed to go to the mob guy, needed to bring a car to him. So, what does she do? She does exactly what he tells her to do. No name or anything, but she shows up to where he's at, and here's this big mob guy, and he's got this giant bag with him, looking like, I don't know, Santa Claus or something, right? That's just, I don't know. Oh, okay, that's how I thought in my head, just like this dude with a Santa Claus bag. I don't know. That's probably inappropriate, but that's what it sounded like. And Evelyn made up the story, not me. So, it's not my story. Anyway, so this mob man with that giant bag, Evelyn starts asking him, like, what's in the bag? Okay. And he tells her, oh, John's in the bag. So now she knows that he's dismembered and everything. And when they ask her, like, what do you say to that? And she said something along the lines of, well, it's not very nice to break up a family now, is it? Like, what the fuck? Listen, that's straight sociopath shit right there. So I don't know. There was probably more going on with Evelyn than they were able to medically diagnose at the time. So fucked up childhood, just, I don't know. Anyway, probably also because of the times that we're in, 1946, they end up actually requesting that Evelyn see a psychiatrist, and the psychiatrist somehow, I don't know, because I mean, everybody said that she was like really smart and cunning and manipulative and knew how to get things out of people. And I feel like that has been proven. Like, I feel like that was proven, but I don't know, whatever. Somehow, Evelyn was able to get the psychiatrist to testify to her being really dull, like dumber than a normal person, okay? And then also that she had the maturity of a 13-year-old. So, I don't know. That that's just not that doesn't work for me. Okay, it just doesn't work for me because I don't agree. I don't believe that that really was the truth. I think that if somebody like that was to be evaluated today, the results would come out a lot different. I'm not a psychiatrist or a psychologist. I don't have a medical degree, but I just feel like, medicine's come a long way. So, okay. So now the authorities feel like they have enough information to know that Evelyn has something to do with this. Evelyn has to have something to do with this, the blood match, but it's shaky back then still, okay? So they end up looking through her house, right? They're looking for evidence. They're looking through Donald's house too, because remember, there's still that police report where John had ended up going and indicating that Donald had threatened to kill him. So, they're looking through the family home, they're looking through Evelyn's home, and what do they find in the family home? In the attic, okay, they find a suitcase. In this suitcase, like it was heavy as shit, okay? The suitcase was full of concrete, and like when they tried to open it, obviously the concrete is hiding whatever the concrete is hiding. So they have to take it down and they crack it open. And do you know what they find in the suitcase? In the cement in the suitcase? They find baby Paul. So at this point, we know Evelyn fucking lied to her mom. That bitch was a liar. That baby did not get put up for adoption. So, I mean, that's why I don't know. I still don't. We'll get back into why I don't feel like Donald really had a part in it. But anyway, they find baby Paul in the cement in the suitcase. Okay. What the fuck? Now, on top of John, there's an infant side that happened. And it's not like the suitcase was found just anywhere. It was literally found in the attic. And when they asked Alexandra about the baby and what happened, Alexandra let them know. Evelyn told me that Paul was given up for adoption. It was scandalous. Scandalous as fuck. I don't know. All of this coming out was just insane. Can you imagine? Oh, man. Evelyn had floated the story about maybe Bill being the person that had hired the hitman to kill John because he was so in love with Evelyn. Of course he's going to do that. And here we have now Evelyn fucking selling everybody down the road, She's wanting to blame Bill now in the murder of John or implicate him in hiring a hitman, whatever it was. Now, they ended up finding even more evidence, okay? In the furnace at Donald's house, they end up finding charred bits of bone and charred bits of the uniform that John would wear to work. And then in the basement, they find saws, and it wasn't looking good for Donald either. Now, I didn't see Evelyn really making a big deal about Donald, but like when they came at her with the baby, with baby Paul, and they asked her about it, she tried to make things even worse for Bill. Now she had ended up saying that Bill had actually killed baby Paul and that she, for some reason, ended up keeping baby Paul in the attic. I don't know, grieving mom, whatever. That's probably what she said. But it's how? Why? What the fuck? And I don't know. I feel like really the psychiatrist should have caught on by then, but like I said, back in the day. Now, Evelyn, Donald, and Bill were all tried for the murder of John, and then there were extra charges. So Bill and Evelyn ended up getting extra charges for the infant side, and then Donald ended up getting extra charges for stealing from his employer, right? Because that's out now. That's something that's known. I don't think that he got his job back. I'm sure he didn't, but yeah, I don't think he ever worked again after that. And they all go on trial, and it's a circus, of course. So through it all, Bill actually ends up having all the charges dismissed. He's nothing to do with this, so they let him go, right? Evelyn gets found guilty for the murder of John, okay? So she gets sentenced to hanging. Plus, she also is found guilty of murdering baby Paul, and she ends up getting life in prison for that, right? So Donald's the accessory because, I mean, they found fragments of bone and fragments of John's uniform in his furnace. So, I mean, that with the saws, basically they thought that Evelyn had murdered John and then went to Donald to help her dispose of John's body, and they burned what they could, and what they couldn't, they threw out. Donald was also found guilty of basically robbing his work, and he got sentenced 5 years for that. And then he was sentenced 5 years for being the accessory to John's murder. It seems like we should be over this, But unfortunately, we're not. Okay? So listen, Evelyn ended up getting a new attorney. Evelyn's attorney was John Robinette. All right? Here we go with another John. I'm just going to refer to him as the attorney or Attorney Robinette or something, but we don't need another John in the story. It's too confusing. Anyway, so she ends up hiring the new attorney and he successfully appeals her case. So I think he got them on a technicality because the first time they had questioned Evelyn, they didn't have whatever proper thing. It's not the US, so I'm not as familiar with like how the Canadian justice system works, but regardless, the attorney got them on a technicality and Evelyn actually got the ability to have a new trial. So, the attorney and Evelyn, they were able to have their day in court. And this attorney was super skilled. He ended up actually being able to convince the court that it was all Donald. Okay. They even raised the idea that Donald had offered somewhere between $300 and $400 for a hitman to go and kill John because John knew and John was going to get Donald in trouble for stealing money from his employer. Wild, okay? Wild. And they got her out on that. So Evelyn's conviction was overturned and technically, I mean, nobody's actually been convicted now of John's murder. With the way that the courts work, they overturned that decision. And yes, Donald ended up serving some time, but not for his murder. So technically, like in the books, they don't have a specific murderer for a specific person that murdered John. And that sucks. Now I know that sounds like it's going to be it, right? We think that's it. We're done. All over with. No. Evelyn ended up only serving 11 years. Okay? She was released in 1958. And not only was she released, but she was given a whole new identity and she just disappeared. Like she did her parole check-ins with the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, but other than that, like nobody ever from her again. Just how do you do that? I don't think anybody could do that nowadays, but she was able to do it and I mean, just the whole case is insane. And you know what? We don't even know if she's actually dead yet. Evelyn could still be alive. She'd be 103, so like I doubt it, but it's a possibility. And some of the speculation on why she was able to get away and how she was able to serve only 11 years and why everything ended up seemingly to go in her favor is all of those relationships that she had built along the way with the politicians and the businessmen and all of the upper elite, all of the people in her infamous little black book. So what a wild tale. See, I mean, this is what I mean by I don't understand how I hadn't heard of it before. It is wild. So, on the 100th birthday for Evelyn, somebody actually tried to go and get additional documents from the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, and they did not comply. That was it. Nobody's ever been able to get all of the details about who Evelyn ended up going to be and what happened for her life. Nobody ended up getting all of that information out at all. So it's still a mystery of what happened to her. And yeah, it was a fun one to look into. Thank you everybody for coming by today. I really appreciate you taking the time to listen to me tell you about a story and ramble on about it. So, anyway, I will see you again next time. Have a good day.